इसको में भी फाउंडर चार्य जगत गुरु शिला प्रभुपाद की
जय
जय श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की जय श्री श्री गौर निताई की
जय
वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की
जय
ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की
जय
कोटि वैष्णव की
जय
निताय गौर सीतनाथ प्रेमानंदी
हरि बोल
all glories to the assembled devotees
हरे
all glories to the assembled
हरे
devotees all glories to the assembled
हरे
devotees
कृष्ण
all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga
जय
all
श्री
glories to Shri
जय
Prabhupada
श्री जय श्री जय श्री प्रभुपाद
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhakteshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ramashloke Bhakti Bhavati Vaishneshri. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for being here, attending the nectarian recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we shall be reading from Canto 5, Chapter 10, text numbers 7 and 8. Both are in prose format, so we don't have them on the board. You can follow it on your device if you have, or just listen.
5?
7 and 8. 7, 8. And only 6 is missing. And yes, 7 has no purport, so we will read 8 and the purport thereby. So text 7 reads as follows. Atha punah swa shivikayam vishamakatayam prakupitavacha rahugana kimidam aritvam jivanmrito mam kardashikritya bhavatri shashanam matti charasi pramattasya chate karomi chikitsam dandapaniriva janataya yatha prakritim swam bhajisya saiti. So I will read the word by word meaning by myself as it's very long. Atha, thereafter, punaha, again, swashivikaya, in his own palanquin, vishamakataya, being unevenly carried because of Jarabharas, not walking properly, rakupitaha, becoming very angry, uvacha, said, rahuganaha, King Rahugana, kim idam, what is this nonsense? Are, O fool, tvam, you, Jiva, living, Mritaha, dead, Mam, me, Kat artikritya, neglecting, Prarthi shashanam, chastisement by the master, Aticharasi, you are overstepping, Pramatasya, who are almost crazy, Cha, also, Te, your, Karomi, I shall do, Chikitsam, proper treatment, Dandapanihi, Iva, like Yamraj, Janataya, of the people in general, Yatha, so that, Prakirtim, natural position, Swam, your own, Pajisyase, you will take to, Iti, thus. Translation by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation reads as follows. Thereafter, when the king saw that his palanquin was still being shaken by the carriers, he became very angry and said, You rascal, what are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know that I am your master? You are disregarding me and not carrying out my order. For this disobedience, I shall now punish you, just as Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, punishes sinful people. I shall give you proper treatment so that you will come to your senses and do the correct thing. Text 8. Evam bahav abadham api bhashamanam naradevabhi manam rajasa tamasanuvidena madena tirakshri krista shesha bhagavat priyaniketam Pandita Maninam Sa Bhagavan Brahmano Brahmabhuta Sarvabhuta Suhridatma Yogeshwara Charyayam Nati Yutpanna Matim Smayamana Iva Vigata Smaya Idam Maha. Word by word. Evam, in this way, Bahu, much, Abadham, nonsensical, Api, although, Bhashamanam, talking, Naradeva Abhimanam, King Raghukana, who thought himself the ruler, Rajasa, by the material mode of passion, Tamasa, as well as by the mode of ignorance, Anuvidhena, being increased, Madena, by madness, Tiraskrita, who rebuked, Ashesha, innumerable, Bhagavat Priya Niketam, devotees of the Lord, Pandita Maninam, considering himself a very learned scholar, Saha, that, Bhagavan, spiritually most powerful, Jarapat, Brahmanaha, a fully qualified Brahmana, Brahmabhuta, fully self-realized, Sarvabhuta Sudhirit Atma, who was thus the friend of all living entities, Yoga Ishvara, of the most advanced mystic yogis, Charyayam, in the behavior, Na Ati Vyutpannamatim, unto King Rahugana, who was not actually experienced, Samayamanaha, slightly smiling, Eva, like, Vigatasmaya, who was relieved from all material pride. Idam, this. Aha, spoke. Translation reads as follows. Thinking himself a king, King Rahugana was in the bodily conception and was thus influenced by material nature's modes of passion and ignorance. Due to madness, he chastised Jarabharat with uncalled for and contradictory words. Jarabharat was the topmost devotee and dear abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although considering himself very learned, the king did not know about the position of an advanced devotee situated in devotional service, nor did he know his characteristics. Jarabharat was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was a dear friend of all living entities, and he did not entertain any bodily conception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words. Purport. The distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond the bodily conception is presented in this verse. In the bodily conception, King Rahugana considered himself a king and chastised Jarabharat in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jarabharat, who was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahugana. A highly advanced Vaishnava devotee is a friend to all living entities, and consequently, he is a friend to his enemies also. In fact, he does not consider anyone to be his enemy. Sruhida Sarvadehinam. Sometimes a Vaishnava becomes superficially angry at a non-devotee, but this is good for the non-devotee. We have several examples of this in Vedic literature. Once Narada became angry with the two sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvera and Manigriva, and he chastised them by turning them into trees. The result was that later they were liberated by Lord Sri Krishna. The devotee is situated on the absolute platform, and when he is angry or pleased, there is no difference, for in either case he bestows his benediction. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So let us take this opportunity to recite the Mangalacharan together. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sadhana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vidam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashanti Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarushyasya Kripa Sindhu Yaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurati Shri Namaha Nilachala Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Balabhadra Subhadravyam Jagannathaya Te Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Mandavate Gati Vatsarvasya Palambuja Shri Radha Madana Mohanam Divyadvrindayanya kalpadramado Srimad Ratnagar Singharshanasto Sriman Radha Srila Govinda Deva Prishtali Vistamanam Smarni Jayatam Srimarasarasarambhi Vamsivata Tatashtita Karshan Venusvaner Gopi Gopinatha Shriyastana Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vacharam, pangum langarate girim, yat kripagamaham vande Shri Guru Kinataranam, Brahmanandamaya Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Thank you very much, dear devotees, for being here. And before we begin further our discussion on this very auspicious topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, I will humbly seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas so that I may be able to perform this devotional service primarily for my own purification. So it's very insightful juncture that we are at in the story of Jara Bharat. And of course we made a long journey from the story of Bharat Maharaj as King Bharat, then him becoming a deer, and then eventually becoming what they call a madman, Jara Bharat. And before we go further, I will just request, I have a tendency to speak fast, and if you do find that I am speaking fast or you're not able to understand something I say, you can please interrupt. So, this text 7 and 8, when I was reading it, there's so many points. And of course, yesterday it was a very nice lecture by Sashray Ramprabhu. I really like, he's very good in his lectures. And yesterday in his lecture, he was mentioning very important points about the demeanor of Jara Bharat, right? He was saying how Jara Bharat was not angered, and how King Rahugana was very sarcastic in his dealing with Jara Bharat. And now we came to a juncture where, he was first sarcastic and he was pretending that to be nice, and now he's just irritated. So Jara Bharat still continued to carry it, and he was still jumping around because it's of the ants and not to harm the little creatures. And when that was happening, Rahugana just lost it. And if you see his words, how harsh he is, and he was saying, what is this nonsense? Don't you know? What are you doing? Don't you know that I am your master? Are you dead despite the life within your body? So it's really heavy actually. He was saying how for your disobedience, I will punish you like Yamaraj punishes all the sinful people. So he was like really angry and very harsh towards Jara Bharat. And this is actually the harshness. And I was listening to a lecture of His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. And Radhanath Maharaj in the lecture, he was explaining that when our selfish motivation is not satisfied, and what we want is triumphed by what the other person wants, we become angry. And therefore we treat another person harshly. And I was just reflecting, also on myself. I have a history of giving harsh feedback. And I was thinking I was resonating with Rahugana's frustration, and I was thinking actually it is so embarrassing that he was so overcome by his personal ego, his personal comfort, and he was so agitated that he was being so heavy with another devotee. And and that is actually the root of our when we become angry, Srila Prabhupada always said that there are two reasons why a devotee, actually there should be one reason why a devotee becomes angry. It is when the service of the Lord, or if someone is in opposition to Krishna, or is blaspheming Krishna, or is interrupting the service of Krishna, then a devotee is legitimately angry, or another devotee is being harmed, then a devotee is legitimately angry. But a devotee is never provoked by anger for selfish reasons. And it is nice to introspect why sometimes, in the name of becoming angry for service, we might become angry because on an egoistic platform. Does it mean that we should never become angry or we should never give feedback? No. In our devotional culture, especially, Prabhupada gave us a training of getting trained actually. He gave us a culture of getting trained. And in this principle, yes, we have a feedback culture, and feedbacks are important for becoming, for progressing in Krishna consciousness. But when we give feedback, or when we react, or when we give feedback to our feedbacks, it's very important to see how much of it is actually coming from the platform of ego. So, also, one remarkable point when His Holiness Bhakti Raghav Maharaj was giving his lecture and he was speaking of the story of Mrigari, when Narad Muni gave the feedback to Mrigari, Mrigari said like, oh, I didn't know. Like there was so much innocence. Sometimes people commit mistakes because out of innocence, because they just didn't know. And similarly, also the position of Bharat Maharaj here is that of innocence. Bharat Maharaj also, he was not trying to discomfort the king, but he was trying to serve the higher purpose or higher cause of not harming the ants, saving lives. But then we see how King Rahugana is very fiercely agitated by this, and so much so that he is so heavy, and he says how he will punish him like Yamaraj, like really heavy stuff. And I was reminded of this one story of Yamaraj that Srila Prabhupada very often, not often, but he gives in his lectures. So how Yamaraj ended up as Vidura. Anyone knows the story? The backstory of why Yamaraj ended up as being born as Vidura in a family of a Shudra. I mean, of course, Vidura is a very personal associate of the Lord. It does not matter. But there is a story of why Yamaraj had to take birth as a Shudra. Does anyone know?
Somebody cursed him, but I don't
Yeah,
know. Yes.
very interesting story. He got a curse actually. So once what happened, Yamaraj, of course, his duty, his service is to, decide punishment or give rewards in that sense when people come, and mostly deciding the punishment for the sinful. And he has an assistant called Chitraketu, if I'm not wrong, who writes down the diaries of everybody, right? So I remember, I think it was my mother who used to crack this joke. If we did something good, she would say, this Chitraketu will write it down. And if we did something mischievous, she would say, Chitraketu will write it down. So, Chitraketu, he writes it down, and Yamaraja is a judge. And actually this morning I was listening to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, a little deviation at this point, but Srila Prabhupada was saying how in the earlier times, the kings, they were also judges. The kings, they were also deciding punishment for people. So it was such a big responsibility, not like the demon crazy society now. Basically, Prabhupada was referring to democracy, he was talking about justice. And given, my background as a lawyer, I know also this fact very well. Prabhupada said that you go to the court and it drags on for years and years. But earlier on, the kings, if they wanted to decide something, they would just get into fight, and immediately, in a few days, they would have the decision. It was a Bhagavad Gita lecture Prabhupada was giving. So, and the kings, they had to have such great responsibility and purity that the king would decide immediately. Sometimes the king himself would come down and slaughter a person. So that was actually the system of justice, very precise, not like today, that you can go to court and the person dies, the property deteriorates, but the case is never decided. So this is the kind of democracy we have now. But anyway, coming back to the point of Jara Bharat, the story of Yamaraj, also like we were talking about. So once what happened, Yamaraj, he had to decide the case of a Brahmana, I think. And then
then I think it was a Brahmana, if I'm not wrong, the Brahmana came, and then Yamaraj told him that he has to have a very severe punishment in hell. And then this person said, such a severe punishment, I had led such a pious life, and then you give me such a severe punishment, what did I do? Then Yamaraja said, okay, let me look at your records. He looked at all the records that Chitraketu had made, and then he said, here I find. When you were a child, you pierced the body of an ant with a needle. That's why, and the punishment was that his body would be pierced through the rectum. It was very harsh punishment. And because as a child you pierced the body of an ant, innocent ant with a needle, you will get this punishment now. So one lesson, of course, of this is that every little thing counts, in front of Yamaraj. And then what happened? A person felt so agitated. He said, for something I committed, as a child, in that innocence, you giving me such a big punishment. I curse you. Mm-hmm. And that's how Yamaraja got a curse. That because of this lowly mentality, may you be born and may you suffer in a low birth. And it's something like this the story goes. And this is how Yamaraj had to take birth in the family of in the family of the Kuru dynasty. Although he was born in a very royal dynasty, he was born out of a Shudra mother. So he was considered a Shudra. So this is how Yamaraj, so this is the thing, this is how risky it is actually to decide. We see here Rahugana in his agitation says that, let me punish you like Yamaraja. But we see that to be in the stature of a king, or to be in the stature of a one who gives judgment, is of high responsibility. So to be in the stature of a manager or of a leader is such a big responsibility. Every little move counts. So I thought this was very interesting from this 7th verse that we could take away. And then the 8th verse actually becomes even more interesting, because then Rahugana, what he does, is very clearly stated how he's in the bodily concept and he's maddened with anger and he chastised Jarabharat. But here, the glory of Jarabharat is pointed out, and 2 times in this translation, it is said that Jarabharat was the abode of the Lord and Jarabharat was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if you recollect, when we were discussing Canto 4, especially when we were discussing the story of Dhruva Maharaj, one word which was constantly used to describe the devotee was Swadharma. Swa means own and Dharma means residence. So a devotee is Swadharma. The devotee is actually the Lord's own residence. And we know this bhajan by Shri Narottam Das Thakur, Ebara Karuna Karo. And in that bhajan, Narottam Das Thakur says, Tumara Hridaya Sada Govinda Vishram. So even our acharyas, they confirm that in the heart of a pure devotee, the Lord resides. The devotee is actually a temple of the Lord. The devotee is therefore non-different from the Lord himself, and that's why we say Shakshat Daritvena Shamasta Shastra, isn't it? Yeah. So we sing how the spiritual master is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the importance of recognizing how rare it is to be in the association of pure devotees. And Prabhupada in this purport points out the devotee is situated on the absolute platform, and when he is angry or pleased, there is no difference. For in this case, he bestows his benediction, and of course Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Narad Muni, who externally angered, gave curse to Nalakuber and Manigriv. But what happened? Although it was fast-tracked actually, because what happened is that they were intoxicated and engaging in illicit activities. If they were to be going through, these karmic reactions, it would take thousands of lifetimes to get purified. And of course, we know the story also. Srila Prabhupada often says that once there was a Brahmana who was giving predictions. You know about the story that there was a son of a king, And then there was the benediction. What did the Brahmana give the benediction to the son of the king?
Never die.
Yeah, may you never die. Why?
When he died, he go to hell.
Yes, because he spent his
Enjoy.
entire life enjoying. So then he said, may you never die. Then there was this man, there was a slaughterer, like a butcherer. And then the Brahmana gave him na jiyo na maro, which means may you never die and may you not live. Why?
Because if he's doing sinful activities now, he's causing suffering, and if he dies, he even gets worse.
Yeah.
And his life is already like hell, so don't leave because it's like
Because
already
he
like hell.
give a lot of suffering to
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah. And then,
To brahmachari.
yes, to the brahmachari, to the devotee, it was, may you
Die.
Die
may you immediately
immediately.
die. Why was it that may you immediately die?
Because he's a devotee and he will go to Krishna.
Yes. So very interesting, also these things. And this is the benediction actually. And at the end of the day, we have to realize that our life is actually a purification. Whatever we undergo in our life is for being purified. And similarly, when a devotee becomes angry or becomes pleased, it is for the benefit of the person. So we should never think that, oh, he became angry or he's overcome by anger. And in Canto 11 of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Uddhava Gita, the devotee is described, the saintly person is described like fire. And this analogy is very important. Why do you think a saintly person is compared to fire? Yes, Janani.
If one comes in contact with the saintly person, all the sinful reactions will be gone.
Yes, that is one interpretation, that as soon as you come into contact with the saintly person, all sinful reactions are annihilated. Yes?
Also, so we shouldn't come too close to saintly person, otherwise we get burned.
I think it's good. Actually,
Fire means knowledge, light.
yes, that's also an interpretation. So, actually in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is described, how it was described in this 24 Gurus, why the devotee is like fire, or a saintly person is like fire. Whatever interaction you have, whatever you offer into the fire, what happens? The fire consumes it. So similarly, if you extend that analogy a bit, whether you have provoke anger or pleasure out of a devotee, you get benediction. Does not mean that we should try to invoke anger, because this morning when I was listening to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada was making this point that a devotee is never angry for himself, but it is Krishna who takes note. So if you make a devotee angry, or if you hurt a devotee may not care, but it is Krishna who takes note, and then Krishna gives you hard time in the end. So anyway, I thought we could highlight two aspects about the pure devotee, because some days ago I was listening to a lecture of Krishna, His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj, and he was actually I was listening to his lecture because Maharaj was describing his experiences with Holiness Bhakti Char Maharaj, and then Maharaj was saying something very deeply moving. He said, that to this day I don't believe that and Maharaj really teared up while saying this. He said, to this day I cannot believe that when I go to Mayapur I will not see Bhakti Char Maharaj. So to this day I cannot believe. But at the same time, I feel that more than grief, I feel privilege that I got to know somebody like Bhakti Char Maharaj. So I was just meditating on this point of how we have to be so grateful actually that Prabhupada gave us a movement which is full of so many saints. Actually, sometimes you will find devotees picking on, this Maharaj did this, that Maharaj did this Prabhu did this Mataji did this, which is fine, Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai 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 Shri Shri Gauranga Ki Jai Prabhupada Ki Jai Nat Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanand. So actually, His Grace Anuttama Prabhu in this ILS, he was once making a point that sometimes the younger generation devotees, they think, oh, it's a senior devotee, so I cannot correct them. I have to tolerate whatever a senior devotee does. But Anuttama Prabhu was saying, but that does not give a license to senior devotees to do whatever they want. And also, there is space for junior devotees to then express themselves if a senior devotee is doing something funny. But that's one aspect. But then the other aspect is sometimes the devotees of our movement become so engrossed in just blaspheming, in just, looking at the ills and the dark side of the movement, the dark side of our devotees, that they miss out on the point that it's such a privilege in this day and age of Kali to be in the association of devotees. And it's really a privilege to have sadhus. And I just wanted to share one pastime actually of our deities, which was maybe 4 years ago. I don't know, I personally experienced this. And it was Srimad Bhagavatam, and it was very close to the Corona time, so the temple was as empty as now. I'm joking, but there were very few devotees at the temple. And then there was a devotee who was giving a lecture, and in the purport of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, there was a description of a sadhu. And he was a senior devotee. And he made this comment that he read the description of a sadhu, and then he just, out of joke, he made this comment. This is the description of the sadhu. I don't know nowadays in our movement if we can really label our sadhus. And it's a strong point he made. And immediately, there was a big bang in front of Gornitai, and everybody turned. And we were all trying to figure out what happened. And it was actually Shri Gornitai did not tolerate that point. They were like, what do you mean my devotees are not sadhus? Actually, what had happened was the earring of Lord Chaitanya had fallen on the cup of the drinking cup and made such a loud sound. Nothing happened to the cup never fell, the lid never fell, but it was such a loud bang. As if Lord Chaitanya was saying that he's not okay with this point. So for me also personally, I experienced how Shri Gornitai, our Shri Gornitai are very present, as is Lord Jagannath. Shri Gornitai may not be as talkative as Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani, but they are very particular about how devotees are treated. And also once I was having, some, sometimes you enter the altar and still you have some thought processes you carry, So I was going through a tough phase and with some devotee, and I was just thinking about it. And I try, of course, when I enter the altar, doing the pujari service, to really clear the head out and really enter as a servant. And try to remember, this is the spiritual world, this is the spiritual kingdom, and when I touch the deities, I'm touching the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself or herself. But then sometimes you carry also, some of your funny thinking. And it was a very distressful time for me, and I was carrying this. And immediately I got a nice, from Shri Gornitai. So for me, it is very clear that Shri Gornitai are very strict. If you mess or if you have funny thinking about devotees, they don't tolerate. They are very strict about the devotees. Anyway, coming back to Shastra, I just wanted to today talk about how devotees are.
It's also sun.
It's also sun. Oh, I switched it off. The devotees also are Janardanasya, which means they are the Lord's own. just for us to actually realize what it is. It is a privilege we have. Actually, some time ago also we had the privilege of having association of His Holiness Bhakti Raghav Maharaj, and now gradually we'll also have few more sadhus coming. So really to take this opportunity to serve them, to listen from them, to be in their presence, because it is such a privilege to be with the pure devotees or saintly personalities. Let's not get into the debate of are they pure devotees, are they Jivan Mukta? I mean, come on. They are sadhus. And it is said, Lapa Matru Sadhu Sange Sarva Siddhi Hoy, in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, that even 1/11th of a second of the association of a sadhu, Sarva Siddhi Hoy, all the siddhis, all the benefits and all achievements can be achieved. So I wanted to just read from 2 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Both are from Canto 3. So one is Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 3. Janasya Krishna Advimukhasya Deva Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya Anugrahena Charanti Nunam Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya. O my Lord, great philanthropic souls travel on the earth on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to show compassion to the fallen souls who are averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord. And when I read this, it immediately reminded me of His Divine Grace Abhacharya Narayana Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. So also in the Gopi Gita, it is said, Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Bhuvi Grinanti Te Bhuri Dajana. So there is this very beautiful pastime of, this is also a little deviation, of Pratap Rudra. He was being constantly rejected by Lord Chaitanya because he was a king. And then I think it was Swarup Damodar who suggested to him that go and serve Lord Chaitanya and sing the Gopi Geets. So he brushed the floor during the Rath Yatra, and then dressed as an ordinary man, King Pratap Rudra went and started to massage the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya, who was lying there after dancing for many hours in the Rath Yatra. In the garden he was there lying, and then when Pratap Rudra was massaging the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya, he started singing this Jaya Titi Kam, the Gopi Geet. And then when he came to this part, Bhuri Dajana, Lord Chaitanya immediately got up, and Lord Chaitanya also said, Bhurida, Bhurida. And he embraced King Pratap Rudra because he was so pleased. Because this last part, His Holiness Bhakti Char Maharaj very often used to describe that this last part in a way also describes Srila Prabhupada's coming. Because it is said that such a devotee is glorified, the one who spreads the name all over, who spreads your name all over the world. And such a devotee, of course, is Srila Prabhupada. And Lord Chaitanya said, Bhurida, Bhurida, he's glorious, he's glorious. So we see that also here, when we read the glorification, we can only be indebted and glorify Srila Prabhupada, who is also a resident of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'll read the purport, it's very short. To be obedient to the wishes of the Supreme Lord is the natural position of every living entity. But due only to past misdeeds, a living entity becomes averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord and suffers all miseries of material existence. No one has anything to do but render devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna. Therefore, any activity other than transcendental service to the Lord is more or less a rebellious action against the Supreme Rule. I found that quite fascinating. Any activity other than transcendental loving service is actually an act of rebellion. All fruitive activity, empirical philosophy and mysticism are more or less against the sense of subordination. And any living entity engaged in such rebellious activity is more or less condemned by the laws of nature, which work under the subordination of the Lord. Great unalloyed devotees of the Lord are compassionate towards the fallen, and therefore they travel all over the world with the mission of bringing souls back to Godhead, back to home. Such pure devotees of the Lord carry the message of Godhead in order to deliver the fallen souls, and therefore the common man, who is bewildered by the influence of the external energy of the Lord, should avail himself of their association. So this is the importance of the association of devotees, of such saintly personalities. And lastly, I would like to stress, because here Prabhupada, we don't have much time, it's roughly 5 minutes now. So I would like to end with this point on how a devotee is the supreme friend and has no enemy. You know, this devotee is also described as Ajata Shatru. The Lord is also described as Ajata Shatru. Why? Because Ajata, means not, Jata means born, and Shatru means enemy. Ajata Shatru means the one whose enemy is not born, means the one who has no enemies, means he is friend to all. So this is very famous verse. Titikshava karunika survida sarvadehinam ajata shatrava shanta sadhava sadhubhushana. 3:25-21. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, he is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. Short purport, I will read it. Okay, not so short. Then maybe I pick the point on Ajata Shatru or Suhrida Sarvadehinam. That is also mentioned here in the purport of today's verse. A sadhu has a thankless task of impressing upon the people the importance of devotional service. And sometimes the sadhu is also personally attached. One of the qualifications of a sadhu is that he is very tolerant and he is merciful to all souls. He is merciful because he is the well-wisher of all living entities. He is not only a well-wisher of human society, but a well-wisher of animal society as well. It is said here, Sarvadehinam, which indicates all living entities who have accepted material bodies. Not only does a human being have a material body, but even other living entities such as cats and dogs, and also have material bodies. Thus the devotee of the Lord is merciful to everyone, the cats, the dogs, the trees, etc. He treats all living entities in such a way they can ultimately get salvation from this material entanglement. So it goes on to describe how the devotee is Suhrida Sarvadehinam, the best friend of all living entities. And also this purport here in Srimad Bhagavatam describes the story of Shivananda Sen. Who knows the story of Shivananda Sen? What is the story of Shivananda Sen?
About dog?
Yes. So once what happened, Shivananda Sen, he organized a very nice Gaur-Manda Parikrama. You went also, no? To go.
It's not Manda Parikrama.
Then?
It was Parikrama to Puri.
Puri Parikrama.
Yeah, devotees once a year, they go from Bengali to Puri, and he organized everything.
Okay, so Shivananda Sen, he organized the Parikrama to Puri with all the Gauri Vaishnavas. And then what happened is, a street dog came along. And the street dog which came along, would you like to describe further, Vasina Prabhu, what happened then?
This dog following all groups,
Yes.
and when they come to river, he also paid for
Yes.
boatman.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened, this dog, he started following for prasadam, for parikrama, and this dog was following the devotees everywhere. And what happened, two instances are very remarkable of how a devotee is Suhridam Sarvadehinam. And that's why actually, we care about all living entities, even about the cows whose milk we drink, about, the soil, everything, because that's the nature of a devotee. So what happened was, when it came to crossing the river, the boatman said, no, sorry, can't take a dog. But Shivananda said, yeah, but he's with us, we have to take him. But the boatman said, no, sorry, no dogs allowed. And then, how it happens in India, sometimes under the desk you can give something. So Shivananda said, okay, you keep this some extra. And he paid, I think, even double or triple the amount to take the dog and cross the river with the dog on the boat. So this happened. So he told everybody that the dog is also a participant. You didn't have to register for this parikrama, free of cost participant. And also he told him, the devotees, that you should take care of the dog and serve him prasadam. And once what happened was, somebody forgot to give him prasadam one meal. The dog went away somewhere. Shivananda was so angry and so anxious. He went around himself not eating, looking for the dog. And of course one can interpret this in many ways, but this really goes on to show how the devotee is actually in such deep sense of care and responsibility. The devotee indeed is the best friend of all living entities. So we see that Srila Prabhupada also used to sign off, "Your ever well wisher." And here Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that a devotee is the personal residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as we know from Ebar Karuna Karo, the bhajan, Tomar Hridaya Sada Govinda Vishram, so we can be rest assured that when we serve Srila Prabhupada, and regardless of our own thinking and thought processes about he did this, she did this, if we serve Srila Prabhupada's devotees, we can be rest assured that we are in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Anantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Gaur Premanande. So thank you very much for your kind attention and attendance. Hare Krishna. I wish you a nice day. Prabhupada ki Jai.
Sadhu Katha about Sadhu.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, Hare Krishna. What time are we leaving today for Hanuman?
Ideally 3:30. I asked Sundar Jagannath Prabhu to check the weather and decide. He will also come. So he will decide whether we will do walking or sitting. So I think roughly around 3:30. But he should inform soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jai. Oh, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
One can turn it around and make.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
pure devotee is the friend of really everyone, and it reminded me of a lecture, I don't know by whom, Vrindavan Chandra was there for sure. We were discussing that Krishna is actually situated in everyone's heart, and he is also experiencing everything that we are doing, like under each other, indirectly and directly. And he was telling like, yeah, it's like when you cut yourself, you see the blood is dripping out indirectly, but you feel the pain directly.
Nice.
In this sense, Krishna is feeling directly everything that we are doing to every living entity, and this is like this was really like wow. And then of course, if the pure devotee sees Krishna in everyone's heart, how can he do anything like harmful to the others?
That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes, it's actually so meaningful. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes a devotee is para dukha dukhi and para sukha sukhi. Like, sorrowful in others' sorrow and happy in others' happiness. And it's not like on a fake, on a bodily platform, like very deeply on a spiritual side. And I remember I heard this one pastime that it was in Germany right after the war and everything, and Srila Prabhupada was in a car, and he was, I heard it from Prabhupada memories, that Prabhupada was driving through, and in that time there were people poverty stricken right after the war, and there was a whole queue of people waiting outside a grocery store, for their daily ration that they get. And the car was passing by, and this Prabhupada disciple described he was sitting next to Prabhupada, and he just saw Prabhupada was crying. And then this devotee asked Prabhupada that he saw this tear coming out of Prabhupada's eyes, and then this devotee asked that, Prabhupada, you crying? And Prabhupada with this very emotional voice said, they are suffering so much. So like that's why actually for Prabhupada he really, we are so fortunate to have his example, because he was so moved by our suffering that at the age of 69 he travelled in a cargo ship. Can you imagine? Like sometimes now, I'm thinking like, now if I have this bodily issue, if I have to do something for somebody, I do it, but I do feel it. But he went out of his way at that age, taking so much, just because of his compassion. And I feel like, he didn't, and that's why I feel like when you recognize this, you can understand each of us have a personal direct relationship with Prabhupada. And although we are not his direct disciples, we didn't directly meet him, he did it for us. He did it for you, he did it for me. And then there's so much, then you feel so loved and so sheltered. Then you begin to personally feel his presence. Also because the devotee is described as Duradarshi, that Prabhupada really did not see just now, but he sees into the future. So in a way he saw us also, and he did this for us. So every person who comes into ISKCON, who comes in touch with ISKCON, that's why like Bhakti Sharma would say that never ever leave ISKCON and never let a devotee leave ISKCON. Because you are actually handpicked by Prabhupada, that Prabhupada wanted us here and he wanted us to be there as part of his movement. He did this for us, especially, each of us. It's very beautiful actually to recognize. Sometimes it's so mind-blowing in this day and age, of Kali, where there's so much nonsense going on, and to be in the association of devotees.
If we really interact with people and know about their sufferings and so on, we get to feel more and more how Srila Prabhupada is saying again and again and again, like, this life is so much suffering, birth and death and old age and disease, and of course now the mentally disease is there also. And then it was just mind-blowing how Keshavaraj once in a lecture he was like, anyone didn't suffer today and it was morning and nobody raised their hand. So if we really see actually the suffering, we would have this burning inside of us, to do something about it, but it's not there yet. So we're not aware of what is going on really.
I think the compassion is not easy to develop real compassion.
it's very easy if you become conscious. That's why Prabhupada is
Yeah.
mentioning this point. If you
Yeah.
really see what is going on, actually, then
But you know, like jnana has to come with vijnana. That you have to realize. We see, we also see, you know. We are conscious, we read and we know because of our philosophy, but we haven't realized. And that's why, at least for myself, I can say, I can be knowing things, but because I haven't realized what it means, the compassion doesn't come. Even compassion for myself, you know. They say charity begins at home. Like, we can't even deliver our own salvation on others. So if I was really in this realization of what's happening, where I am, and what Prabhupada has given, my life would be totally different, but it's not like that. So yeah, this realization is so important. So yeah, it's a gift actually what Prabhupada has given. Okay, like I remember many times I used to ask Vatsha Maharaj, because I would feel so, disturbed by the fact that I know the philosophy, but the realization is not coming. It's just not coming, you know. Then you know what you have, but it's like throwing away a piece of diamond, you know. And I used to ask him so many times that, you know, because I just feel so restless about it and so like, wow, what am I doing? And one thing he would always tell me in such a peaceful way, he would just say, but you started the journey. And sometimes that's what the journey, it's the journey that matters, they say, you know. So Hare Krishna. We've started the journey. At least we've started. Yeah, that matters. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It's just the more we want to get these realizations on our own, the more we also see that it's actually not possible.
No.
Only if Krishna is opening the door, then you can see some glimpses. But
Yeah.
and yeah.
Also, Keshav Maharaj makes this point, you know, like for a long time I thought I could be self-made, but no one can be self-made. So many times in his lectures he says.
Yeah, especially if you're quite strong, like physically and intellectually, it's even more difficult to think that you're actually not able to do anything. I just saw this in book distribution so much, you know, like I'm not doing anything, and then I'm like, oh my God, help me, and especially the devotees, if they're praying, then something is going on, but otherwise they're and to have this really deep friends like Srila Prabhupada who is just there and
we have it.
anything for us, like this is so amazing.
Yeah. All we need to do is be true to his instructions. You needed something?
No, just
Oh.
we are from Mumbai, so
It's your first time at our temple.
yes, for this temple, first time.
Okay, very nice. Yes, we have Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subhadra and Shishi Konita. You are connected to the temple in India?
Yeah, I know the president of Juhu temple, which
You
is
go to Juhu. Okay.
yeah, Brijari Prabhu. So
Yeah.
we work together.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, if you stay around, we'll have prasadam. You can also take prasadam with us if you like.
Okay.
Thank you for visiting us.
So
Hare Krishna.
it's
our pleasure.
so we can quick picture in there, yeah?
Yes, you can take pictures of the deities.
Ah,
Yes.
okay, we'll- So this temple is under with GBC.
Well, Krishna Premarupa Prabhu, he will become the GBC, it's Madhudina Sharana now.
Okay. And he stays in Juhu.
Yeah, he is from our temple, yeah.
And you stay nearby.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want, you can go up, there's Prabhupada's museum, you can see.
Oh, we've seen this entire thing. Yeah.
Okay, very nice.
Mumbai, we have original stuff.
Here also it's
Yeah.
original, it's not fake.
Like it's the biggest museum in the world.
Yeah, but if you want, you can also take darshan
We'll
of
check.
Prabhupada.
Yes.
I like this point. Any activity that is not love interest.
Yes.
This is rebellion.
Good one, huh?
Yeah.
eyes of knowledge. Okay, then.
Thank you so much.
I will